Welcome back, guys. So why am I surrounded by tree collars? Because that's what I'm going to be teaching you how to build today. I'm going to be teaching you how to make this tree collar. People call them tree collars, people call them tree skirts, whatever you want to call them, but the wooden versions of the tree skirts are hitting. They're hot. They're on every one of our sites that we talk about in our other videos. But what I noticed was this version is only being made by one company that I could find. So no, I do not have these staged up yet, but this is what they look like under a tree. So this will be another fence picket build. Again, you do not have to use fence pickets. You can use any material that you would like. If you would like to buy 1x6s, then go buy 1x6s. But I will be using fence pickets. I use cedar for this particular project just because I had cedar pickets here. But if you are going to be painting these, go ahead and just use the pine ones. They're only $2 a piece. It takes 5 pickets to make these, so you can make this for about $10. And this is a very large one. So this is for a big Christmas tree. This one's 32 inches wide when the most common ones are only about 24 inches wide, so you could probably do it with even less material. But like anything else that we have talked about, it is going to be about making them look like something they cannot buy at the store. Yes, they can buy both of something similar at the store. They're expensive, but ones at the store have a template on those. They're not different colors. You can get these spray-on templates. I'll actually link the ones in the description that I use, and it comes in a bundle with several for around $10. And like always, if you're going to make these, make different styles. So we have the ones with the logos and the emblems. That's catchy, but you also have the farmhouse look, you know, the X-frame. But for today's video, like I said, I will be showing you how to make this one just because it is different, just because you cannot find them everywhere. And this is an optional feature. I wanted mine to be able to lock together. So I put slip pin hinges and the two corners that do not have hinges. That way it can just be popped off and then folded up for storage. This is what I was talking about. This little piece here sat down onto a pin. That is the problem with a lot of Christmas stuff. It takes up a ton of room. So with this design, you do not have to worry about that. Just like always, I'm going to teach you every single step on how to make this thing. I will not have time in this video to teach the square design, but again, for those who like plans in their hand, I will be throwing the plans for this one and for the square one onto my Etsy shop. I'll link that into the description. So make sure to check that out, and while you're at it, make sure to check out our Patreon. It is growing like crazy. If you have any cool builds or any cool ideas, send them to the brag board. All that is going to be linked into the description. So I have a lot to cover in this video, so let's go ahead and dive into it. Welcome back, guys. So I get a lot of questions about the pickets that I use. I always use 5/8 by 5.5 by 72 inch long pickets. Sometimes I use pine and sometimes I use cedar. But what I've noticed here lately is they say 5/8, but they're actually closer to 1/2 of an inch. And as always, I will be putting the cut list into the description. But if you'd actually like the plans, head over to my Etsy shop. I'll link that in the description as well. I'll definitely have the plans for this build and hopefully have the plans for the square build. If not, it'll be a couple days. And I'm going to start out just by cutting my wall boards. Okay, you'll notice that I am actually cutting these square. I like to do this. You know, the plans will actually have the miters on them, but I like to cut them square and then add our miters or our angles. And I always like to do this before I actually take anything to the table saw. And the reason why is a lot of times, and most of the time, the wood that we get anymore is bowed. So by cutting our pieces ahead of time, you're actually reducing the amount of bow with each cut that you make. And you'll notice the little dome that I've built over my miter station. This is a test that's actually hooked up to a vacuum, and I want it for the fine particulates. The miter saw is one of the worst for controlling these fines, even with dust collection hooked up to it. So I'm going to try this out. Okay, so you should have 8 boards at this point, and they're all still 5.5 inches wide, or roughly. We need to bring those down to 5 inches wide. And if you notice what I'm doing here, I'm just checking for which side is the straightest, and I'm going to put that against the fence. So once we have all of our parts A and parts B, which should be 8 pieces total, we will put a bevel on one side of the A1 parts and the B1 parts. And I'm going to put a 30-degree bevel on this. And what this bevel will do will actually make this pyramid shape. So it will sit flat on the ground because this is our base. So with the freshly cut side of the wood against the fence, I'm going to move the fence in just slightly until our bevel cut meets equally with our face. So the face is still 5 inches wide. So what I'm trying to tell you here, no, it's not gang signs again, is to put the best looking side of the material facing up. Because once everything is assembled, this will be the outside of your panels. So once we have our A1 and B1 boards beveled, we can move on to our miter saw. And I'm going to set my miter saw to the right at 26.5 degrees for the angle. And I'm going to put a 14.5 degree bevel on this as well. And we're going to use this to cut all 8 boards. And so while the saw is set up in this position, we'll go ahead and make the rest of our right hand cuts. And for the left-handed miter bevels, we're just going to duplicate these degrees on the left side of the saw and make all of our left-handed cuts. That's what you want. So at our workstation, let's go ahead and lay out our panels facing up. And I'm just checking to make sure that all of our parts line up and we don't have to do a last-minute trim. Once that's established, I'm going to take all of our top boards, so that's going to be A2 and B2, and flip them over to the backs. I put marks on the backs, that way I do not get confused because, you know, that happens sometimes. And then I'm going to head over to the 720, set my drill depth to 1/2 of an inch, and put 4 pocket holes in the backs. And then I'll just repeat this for all of my A2 and B2 boards. So now let's get these panels connected. So we're going to flip over all of our bottom boards so our faces are down. And for this, you'll be installing 1-inch pocket hole screws. I did not use glue for this project, but you definitely can. And I know it feels like we've been all over the shop, but back to the table saw. And what we are wanting to do with the face down is put that same 30-degree cut on each one of these panels. Now you'll have a 30-degree bevel on the tops and bottoms of these. And now that's all we have left to do is trim these out and put a couple of hinges in. So for this trim, there are no bevels, so make sure that reset your bevel back to 0. All of these trim parts are 1 inch wide, and all parts D and all parts E will be at a 26.5 degree angle. And all parts C will be at a 31.5 degree angle. And now it's just installing the trim on all the panels. And I will be using wood glue for this because I'm going to be using 3/4 inch finishing nails. You could screw this on if you would like, but there's really no need just because, you know, this is the trim and it's going to be way underneath of a tree. And now for our hinges, we will be combining a long panel and a short panel. Make sure to put the short panel inside of the long panel. And I found by throwing a couple of clamps to the outside, it will definitely help keep this in place while you're installing your hardware. So I flipped mine upside down, and I'm actually going to be putting a support stick on the bottom. So now the bottom is facing up. Make sure everything is good and square and lock it into place. We're ready to throw some hinges on. And these are just some little cheap hinges that I found on Amazon. I'll throw those into the description, but you can really pick them up anywhere. And I'm just going to pre-drill and install these about 1 inch from the top and 1 inch from the bottom. And this is how it should hinge when you're done. The short side will just fold right on top of the long. And that's pretty much it. You can leave these as 2 separate pieces and just unfold them and slide them together. They're really not going anywhere once they're underneath the tree, but if you would like to actually lock these into place, you can use these slip pin hinges. If you choose to do that, make sure that both sides are offset, so they're double offset. But you would just install these on the 2 sides that do not have hinges. And that's all they are, is a locking mechanism. So you can actually slide these up and slide these back down. So here's an example of disassembly. And here's an example of putting it back together. Super convenient for storage, and just this folding aspect will increase the value of this item. And next comes the fun part. You get to decorate this up. You can use stencils, paint, stain, do whatever you like. Put your twist to it. Get creative and sell these things like crazy. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you were able to take something away from that, learn something from that, because I know that I did during the build process of this baby. And there are no plans for any of these tapered collars that I could find anywhere, so that's the reason why I decided to build these and build a set of plans for these. And that brings me to another topic. When you figure something out, when you spend days trying to learn something new and it finally clicks and makes sense, remember there are other people that are going through the same thing. So So share what you learn. Do not try to keep any of this a secret, because there should not be secrets in our trade, okay? We share things, we share our knowledge, and we share what we learn. If that was the case, we would not have videos like this. If I spent all of that time trying to figure this out, how to make everything collapse correctly, how to make everything align correctly, and then decided to keep it all to myself, I mean, that would be just greedy, really. So we're not that. We're not those type of people, especially on this channel. I will keep pumping the content out, but that's all I ask of you, is that if you learn something, I want you to teach it, pay it forward, pass it along, and that's how we will grow, and that's how this trade will survive. So until next time, guys, go out there, make some of these, make a lot of these, get them on the market, make some money. See ya. I don't even know if you can see me through all these. Can you see me?